Dr. Burke?
Hi.
Excellent. All right, then. We're live on YouTube.
Yes, we are.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 11:03. Excellent. All right, then. We're live on. Someone's talking?
No, I think.
Good. Okay, so roll call. Have you got that, Selena? Selena, have you got the roll call?
I don't.
Marianne.
Marianne.
Marianne, unmute.
There were no public comments if you guys need to know that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Pledge of allegiance.
Stand up.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the
to the
flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hope you all have flags in your office.
We do.
I do. Okay. Any guests? You said no guests, that's correct? Any public comment?
No public.
All right, so item number 1, consider approval of Harlingen Help Site Improvement. Grant agreement authorizing the disbursement of site improvement grants of $1,500 to El Vaquero Adult Daycare. Riddell?
Okay, so good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here at our special workshop meeting. We had one little item that's kind of regular business, and then we'll get into the budget after that. But I just wanted to talk about El Vaquero Adult Daycare. They were one of the applicants for the original Harlingen Helps program. And unfortunately for them, they kind of missed the deadline in terms of filing all the paperwork, but they had done some improvements to their facility. And they were asking if we would consider going ahead and paying a grant of $1,500 for their site improvements. In your packet, you had a picture of the before and after. Basically, what they were looking at was about $1,500 worth of improvements, basically to replace ceiling tiles inside their facilities. They have a total of 15 jobs that they're retaining, and staff recommendation is that we go ahead and grant this one because they actually were working with us prior to the expiration of the program. And we actually set aside some monies in anticipation that they would file. So staff is looking for a motion to approve the grant agreement.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 2, consider and discuss fiscal year 2021 proposed budget.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. And today we're going to talk a little bit about expenditures. I didn't want to get into too many of the other items. We've already talked about revenues at a previous meeting. We will kind of gather everything together at the next meeting where we can look at the revenues, if there's any adjustments, and also at our expenditures. And what you're looking at is basically a spreadsheet that shows our actuals for the fiscal year 18-19, which was last year. The projections for this fiscal year, which is 19-20, plus the proposed budget for next year. So in the budget, we've got administrative expenses, we have marketing expenses, we have, of course, our business incentives, and then some other development corporation expenditures, as well as debt service. And we're going to go through all of that, first starting with our administrative expenditures. Last year, we spent $1.4 million, $1,427,960 in administrative expenditures. This year, we're on track to spend about $200,000 less. And for next year, just in summary, I'm proposing $1,333,679. And what that entails is our personnel, payroll, benefits, supplies, general services, maintenance, miscellaneous, billboards, and operations. And I'll go through all of those individually. The wonderful thing about Excel spreadsheets. Now, let me ask, first of all, is everybody okay with the screen size? Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
If somebody can't, please let me know. I'll try to blow it up as big as I can. Obviously, our personnel services have increased because we've got 3 people now this fiscal year that we didn't have in 18-19. So we went from 366,000 to on track to spend $451,000 worth of personnel. Next year, I still have a vacant position. And so if we fill that position, then next year we're going to bump up our payroll to $511,103. And then along with the personnel services on payroll, obviously the benefits include taxes and health insurance and life insurance and our workers' comp. Those are remaining relatively flat, just they're all dependent on how much we're spending in terms of salaries. Our supplies general line item, it hasn't been really used to last year. It was only $80. This year, we're looking at $15,000, but that is for items that we're proposing to purchase probably in the next 6 weeks or less, related to working remotely. And also, we've talked about this for a long time, getting iPads for the board members. We've got it in the budget and we're going to work on that. And then for next year, we've got $15,000 for additional expenditures related to general supplies. That's the proposal anyway at this time. Our general services and charges include utilities for the building that we have on FM 509. Our communications is basically our telephone system, and also Zoom meetings and all that. So there has been a little bit of an increase, and a lot of that is really related to us doing these Zoom meetings versus doing things in person. Our website development and maintenance, this year we're looking at $46,000. That's really for the new websites. We have a new Spanish language website, and we're upgrading the existing website, which hopefully by the end of the fiscal year we'll be done with and be able to launch by this fall. So next year, what we're proposing is basically, now that we have 2 different websites, our hosting fees are a little bit higher. So, and some of the maintenance fees are a little bit higher. So we're a little bit higher than last year, but kind of in line with the increases. Our equipment rentals or leases, that's basically our copying machines and some of the other equipment here, remaining fairly flat. I've increased the number just slightly, just in case we have some issues that we need to address. We started paying rent when we sold the building last year. This year, a full year is $34,788 is what we're expecting. For next year, our lease expires in August. So through August of next year, we're going to spend $32,000 in rent. After that is something that we've already talked about and trying to make sure that we find a location for us in the future. Professional development, dues, membership, subscriptions, that type of thing. These are different organizations that we belong to as an entity, as an individuals. We're fairly flat in this. I'm projecting 24,000 for next year, which is kind of in line with what it was last year. This year we're down a little bit. We've set aside, as part of my agreement, some funds for educational courses, professional courses for me. I think that this year I'll spend about $1,000 on that. I've got $15,000 set aside for next year. We've had that in line for a while, and maybe next year I'll be able to actually make some time to finish off those courses. And then employee mileage reimbursements, kind of a given. Insurance, this is insurance on properties that we own. And so therefore, we're fairly consistent with this past year in terms of our projections for next year on the general services and charges. On maintenance, this is basically maintaining the properties that we own. We're projecting 12,000, which is kind of in line with last year's. This year's, we were able to save some money because frankly, we didn't have until recently a whole lot of rains. And so we weren't having to mow as much other property. And then we're going to talk about marketing in a minute, and this is where marketing, miscellaneous, and promotion goes in. But this is kind of in line with what we've been spending in the past. And then switching over to operations, we're still paying on behalf of the city or reimbursing the city for expenditures related to our legislative consultants. I am proposing that we continue that we're budgeting $12,000 per month. That's $144,000 for next year. We always set aside some monies for economic development studies. Depending on the projects that we're working on, sometimes some of the people that are helping us in trying to package some incentives require that we do some analysis on some of those studies. We've also participated in a wage study for the maquiladoras, and we participate in a call center study as well. And so we keep in kind of in touch with what's going on in our market, in our labor market. Next year, we really do need to do a labor study just to make sure that we have that information readily available. And so that's what these monies are for. We have always been consistent in paying the city $58,000, at least for the last 8 years, in terms of their support for some of our accounting and personnel matters. And so that's being projected to be an expense for next year. Our office expense, this is supplies and whatnot. Last year we were at 54.44. This year we're projected at 56. So I'm just putting 6,000 for that. Our professional fees are basically engineering and legal fees. We've been fairly consistent. I'd like to err on the side of caution and budget $10,000 a month. Depending on our activity level, that could get up to that point, but typically it's less than that. Our audit fees have been fairly consistent, so I'm budgeting $9,000 for that. Our registration fees for travel and training have increased a little bit because we've got more staff, and in doing the continuing ed and making sure that our staff is very much in track with what's going on in our market. Put some money in for travel and training as well. Insurance, this is also this property insurance. And then we've got some miscellaneous lines where we're trying to stay consistent with what we're doing this year. On the hosting and groundbreaking events, a lot of this is actually promotional items as well. And so we set aside some monies for that. If you look at total operations, obviously in last year we had $492,500 in expenditures that was actually went back to the 4B. That was their portion of the sale of the University Center. And so if you back that out, the operations for last year were at about 315,000. We went up a little bit at 388 this year, and I'm projecting at 459. That's typical for my type of budgeting, but that 459 will probably be much smaller. So in total, our administrative expenses are fairly consistent with what we've been doing over the last couple of years. Again, this one has almost $500,000 of monies that are not there, but there's $100,000, $133,000 extra this year over last year in terms of administrative expenses. And half of that is for that other position that hasn't been filled. Now on to marketing. I'm going to allow Celine to take over the screen and talk a little bit about the marketing. But first, I just want to kind of show a little bit more. She'll get into some details on this, but our direct mail, we've never really spent a lot of mail because everything's electronic nowadays, but we do from time to time do some print stuff and send it out. Travel this year went way down because basically nobody's doing as many things. There's some virtual events that are included in that 18,000. And I think that as people are learning how to deal with the pandemic, we're starting to get real creative in our different conferences. So next year, we're going to see a ramp up in some of these virtual conferences. And so I put some money in there for that. It's not specifically travel, but it's related to conferences and attending these virtual conferences as well. And then the advertising this year versus last year, very consistent at about 85,000. We've got a little bit of a ramp up for next year, and that's where I'm going to turn it over to Celine. If you can take over the screen, Celine.
Okay.
Hang on. And well, before we go on to the marketing, any questions on anything that I've just kind of gone over? Okay.
No.
Celine.
All right. My camera's not on, but everyone can hear me, right?
Yes.
All right, so I had sent everyone a marketing and engagement plan. I'm not going to go through it all. It was quite a bit, but just, to briefly summarize that, we're really pushing towards launching our Choose Harlingen campaign. And as we all know, Harlingen's business community spans from building rocket components to healthcare and automotive and industrial sector to family-owned businesses, and they all have one thing in common: they choose Harlingen to do business and more. This campaign will tell their stories and will tell their true testaments and show, the actual, business owners and leaders. And the campaign will be used across all platforms, from digital to print to television and radio. We have very carefully selected various medium publication outlets. We're maintaining true to our commitment to strengthen local and regional businesses, and have selected local publications that have proven to draw more viewers and visitors to our website and social media. As the campaign evolves, so will our content and marketing. And here, just a few, have not included all of the publications that we'll be advertising in, but Texas Border Business, Rio Grande Guardian, Valley Business Report, RG Vision, Valley Morning Star, which are the local ones, and then more national and expanded marketers, advertisers, Expansion Solutions, Area Development, and Business Facilities. So why do we select these? Pretty simply put, there's more bang for our buck with a lot of these. We're looking to target the right audience. We can pay for 20,000 new users to come visit our website, but we want to make sure that the people that we're targeting, the people that are coming to our website, are there for a purpose, and we're not just in their feed. For example, Texas Border Business, one of our most recent ads with them, it drew up to 2,000 new users to our website just in June. Their ad reach is 250,000 views per month. RG Vision has a reach of 14,000 a month, and their magazine can be found in 400 locations valley-wide. Mexico Industry is one that we have worked with in the past, but we're going to continue expanding more into their newsletters and some editorials. They have a circulation of 160,000 for their magazine. They're found in 10 states in Mexico, 76 cities, and 350 industrial parks. Expansion Solutions, 20,000, their print is 20,000 print circulation. They have a viewership of up to 175,000 combined with web visits, newsletters, social media, etc. Business Facilities is up there as well with 300,000. So like I said, we're being selective and working with these publications and these media outlets because, they have a proven track record of getting us that audience that we want to have on our website. And I will just go over really briefly on the branding that was in that marketing engagement plan, just so that way you see that, when you see our new ads and you see our new stuff that we're marketing, it's aligning with this new branding that will also match the updated website. We're creating a more uniform look. When there is a strong brand, there's, such as already used star that's, pretty much synonymous with the Harlingen EDC. It solidifies our message and guides us in the right direction. So we will be making better use of that star. We have updated our colors and our fonts. We did keep our red, white, and blue with a much softer tone. So, and you can see, just here in this presentation, this is kind of the look that we're going for. And here's one of our most recent ads that you will see in RG Vision for the September-October issue that aligns with the new branding. So the blue and the red is still very much prominent. The branding supports our marketing and advertising efforts. Our uniform look will help create a more consistent appearance in our marketing and advertising. They're both, important components to building our brand and being recognized by our audience. And this is just a quick overview. We have done a lot of content marketing recently. That's, with a lot of press releases and a lot of storytelling. We're going to continue that and ramp that up with the testimonials that we'll be doing through Choose Harlingen videos, where we'll be sitting down with business owners and business leaders, and they'll be telling us why they're choosing to do business in Harlingen. And we'll continue to be that resource hub for vital business information and gaining the trust of our audience, that they can trust our organization and our work. So we're nurturing and creating our valuable partnerships within our community and beyond. And that is it for me. And I don't know, Radel, if you want to go through anything else.
Yeah, I'm not done. I'm gonna go back to the spreadsheet we were working on.
Right.
Okay, so we're back
That's a
to-
great report, Celine. Just I'll comment on that. So the videos and the pictures and the content that I've been seeing over the last few months have been really good, especially on our Harlingen Helps program and highlighting the small business owners. I think that's come across really strong.
I agree, Celine, and it's great quality. You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
It certainly is. Okay, so that's the marketing, and basically continuing with that. The other thing that we're going to go over right now is actually our business incentives. Fox Valley Molding, we still have $54,000 that we carried over from last year that they should have already qualified for. I think they qualified for some of that, but we're waiting on some of the paperwork from them. so that we can go ahead and bring it back to the board to disperse the funds. But they created close to 70 jobs when they did their expansion. There's just some documentation that's missing, and then once that's done, then we'll be able to talk about that. SBH was last year was the last year for them, so this year and next year obviously you have 0 on there. And the United Launch Alliance last year was $300,000. It's for the new agreement with them that we enacted last year. This year we will have spent the $300,000 plus $150,000 from 2 years ago that when we signed the new agreement, for whatever reason, it just kind of fell through the cracks. So we spent that additional $150,000. And so next year we go back on track at $300,000 incentive if they meet all the requirements. And I'm assuming that they will, and that's why I put 300,000 in there. El Clavo has never really gotten to the point to where they built that rail spur, and thus we haven't been to the point to where we had to disperse anything to them. And the help program, I'm going to talk about that, but this year we're hoping to push at least $650,000 out. And then there's putting $350,000 of the million that we had allocated for this year back into next year's budget, just in case. But I'm going to let Beverly take over the screen right now and kind of give us an update on that help program. Beverly, can you do that?
Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen, guys. Oh.
Isn't this technology wonderful?
Can you enable the share screening, Celine? Sorry.
You should be able to do it.
There it goes. Okay, 1 second. All right, let me just share the presentation. Okay, so this is just essentially just basically the loan recipient summary of the loans that we've done so far. And then I'll just give you a quick update of pending loans and pending applications. So far we've had 5 rounds with 42 approved loans. And we've dispersed around at $386,000 in loans. And of those applicants that were approved, they actually were employing before COVID 291 jobs. So we're hoping that we can continue to fund those loans to be able to sustain or retain those 291 jobs and beyond as we see more applicants. If we look at each round, we've had pretty much the same amount of approvals. Round 1 and 2 were our largest applications approved. And then of course, 3, 4, and 5, we've seen similar numbers, but each round we typically see anywhere from 6 to 7 to 8 applications. So you can see what we have there per round. If we look at the length of business closures for the applications that we have approved, it's equal between did not close and close longer than 8 weeks. Percent of revenue loss due to COVID, our greatest is about 46 to 55% loss during these times. We are looking at numbers not just in March and April, but we're also looking at June and even partial July now to see what that loss is for the months that we are still going through this. Employees, we're definitely reaching small business. The majority of the applicants only have 1 to 3 employees. And you can see the other employees there, the number. And then most of the applicants did not receive an SBA or EIDL loan. So it's good to know that we are able to, offer this loan to those businesses. And then of course, here you can see most of the applicants are health and beauty, restaurants, and of course, retail, apparel, flower. We typically have been seeing those across the board coming in as well. And then your district locations, if you want to see how the loans are based on the district or where they're located in the city by district. And then a majority of our applicants that were approved do collect sales tax, so that's good to know. And then of course, years in business, you can see that here. And then the majority of the loans that we have dispersed have been at the $10,000 limit. However, we have given out smaller loans due to, you know, the sales that they receive and their expenses that they usually have. Right now, we do have about 25 partial applications that we're still going through, following up with those applicants, making sure that they provide the documentation and actually submit their full application. And then currently submitted applications, we have 7 that we're working on. So hopefully we'll be able to have a committee meeting here within the next few weeks to get those pushed through. So we do have a lot on the horizon, and hopefully, like Radell mentioned, we'll be able to get to that $650,000 amount. That's all I have.
Could you go back a couple of slides?
Sure.
I wanted to see, it's the bars. That's it.
This
Where does travel and leisure fit into that?
travel and leisure just depends. I mean, we had the, you know, one of the retail shops from the airport submit some information and they were approved. So that's under retail. Travel, have we even seen any travel leisure? I haven't seen
No.
any applicants of that nature yet.
The hardest hit segment in the economy right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think next is restaurant and bar. But anyway, okay,
Yeah,
I was curious.
Definitely.
There,
Yeah, so we
there
really
were-
haven't.
There were a few hotels that started applications, but for whatever reason, because we can tell when they start an application online, but for whatever reason, they never completed it. With most of those, we've tried to follow back up with those that started an application and didn't get to the finish line, if you will. But they didn't respond. So not sure if it's because they're managing through it, or they might have gotten some federal assistance already, and that's sufficient for them.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
There is a difference now from the beginning. We are seeing now that some of those applicants that are coming in have actually received an EIDL or PPP loan now. Prior to what we were seeing is they had not yet. So
The health and beauty category, would that include everything from doctors to nail salons?
yeah, it does include gyms. It includes the only specific type of, like, we really haven't had a lot of healthcare, but yes, it does include, you know, doctors, gyms, yoga studios, that type of thing.
Okay.
There was one clinic that was actually approved
Right.
for the $10,000 loan.
Bev, are you getting any interest from companies with more than 25 employees now that we changed the rule?
You know, I haven't really seen that big of an increase in people applying with those larger employees. And maybe it's due because they have, you know, opportunity to get a larger PPP and cover that. And with the extension of, you know, 24 weeks versus 8 weeks with the PPP now, maybe that's the reasoning. But no, I haven't really seen very many applicants come in with larger than 25 employees.
Yeah. Anything
Any
else
other-
on that? Okay, we'll get back to my screen. Y'all see it? So just to show the different new and existing business projects, there's a lot of detail in these spreadsheets. If I go up here on top, then it's on a month-to-month basis in terms of our expenditures and whatnot. And so we're able to track quite a bit. Obviously, we're tracking sales tax revenues, personnel, marketing, you name it, we're tracking it all. But this year we had Bell's Mold, which actually is TPPS. We had their $25,000 grant that was funded. We've got about 99, close to $100,000 worth of expenditures that are going to be spent on Harlingen Industrial Park improvements. For next year, I'm setting aside $150,000 for basically phase 2 of that Harlingen Industrial Park improvements. So phase 1 is basically some of the landscaping along Grimes and all of it along Industrial Way. So phase 2, we want to get into the signage and also stretching out into 509 and some of the other locations out there. But again, that's a fluid number. Depending on what happens in the industrial park, that can change, and maybe we can make that part of another larger grant application versus us actually spending that. When we purchased property off of the expressway close to Roosevelt, that was project grant entrance. We don't plan on spending any of that money, any more monies on that right now. The park at Roosevelt is really all that land, which includes grant entrance and everything else. This year we will have spent close to $12,000 on some due diligence and also some engineering drawings and estimates and whatnot. For next year, we want to make sure that we are updated on all the due diligence. And also we've got one of the spec builders that is working on that project along with us that we've talked about in the past. A year and a half ago, we spent some monies on the FedEx canopy improvements at the airport. That was a one-time expenditure. This year and last year, we did a job retention grant for ITD. That was this year was the last year of that. And project development, we expended some monies to buy some property that was then flipped over to the city and is now part of the UTRGV campus, if you will, off of their close to their med school and right behind or south of the Neuroscience Institute.
Medical Drive.
So yeah, so you all remember that, right? Then for the public improvement district, we may get that back going. So we've got some monies in there just to cover some legal expenditures for that. We had set aside $242,000 last year for a sidewalk project as matching monies for the city. That has not been expended. I'm projecting that it probably won't be expended. So that may move over to next year's number. Dan, I don't think that we're going to spend it this year, right? Because you've still got some, you're shaking your head, so that's okay.
Yeah, no, I don't think we'll spend it this year. It'll probably be next, early part of next
Probably
fiscal
carry
year.
that over to next year. And then project target 2. I'm sorry, Polysachi Polymers. We had approved a loan/grant of $50,000. They haven't taken it yet, but they may be doing that fairly soon. For target 2.1, that's basically an expenditure and agreement that we entice Target to build. Obviously, they're under construction right now, and I'm projecting that they're going to be open by next year, and thus we'll spend that $400,000. That's why we have that on our budget for next year's request. Frankie Flaves and Johnny Rockets both participated in a commercial recruitment program. This is a percentage of the rebate on sales tax that they generate. So last year or this past year, they were basically starting up, and I think their numbers are going to go up a little bit, and they'll get a little bit more money through that program. The old program, the Harlingen Helps, which we just talked about, we had expended $6,000 plus the $1,500 that you approved today. That's the $7,500 that we will end up spending this fiscal year. I'm not putting any money for that for next year. And then for the Project FIS, this is at the airport, the Federal Inspection Station. This is our contribution as was approved in the past. Whether it gets expended this year or that gets pushed to next year will depend on what the airport does in terms of timing. So when you look at that, you know, these numbers are all fluid, and 1 year doesn't necessarily mean that the same pattern is going to be there for next year. Obviously, if we don't know about a project, we don't put it in here, and we don't try to guess as to what might happen in the future. So we keep money in reserves, and if a project does pop up, then we can certainly amend the budget and make sure that we cover that. So that's really kind of a summary of the business incentives that we have out there and the obligations that we have out there. If anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to go through that. If not, then we'll go over into other expenditures. The Goal Line Assistance Program was something that we came up with this year. It was a $100,000 grant to TSTC. Not sure that we want to continue something exactly like that, but I am setting aside $90,000 for something very similar to that. Unless you guys think that we should not do that, then I can always take that out. But I think that by the time before we finalize this budget, I want to make sure that TSCC gives us a final report on that $100,000, and I think you're going to be very pleased with what the results are so far from that program. On regional memberships, this $21,875 is for RESTEC. I'm assuming that they're going to be very similar in their ask for the contribution, so I set aside $25,000 for that purpose. I-69 Alliance, I am a board member on the I-69 Alliance, Texas. And Harlingen participates in this and has been participating in this since its inception. So this year we'll be expending about $9,000 in that category. I bumped it up to $9,500 next year in case there's any kind of travel just to cover that. We continue to do the Kaufman entrepreneurship training. We laid off a year last year, but this year we have had 2 classes, and I'm assuming that we can continue that for next year. So I set aside $15,000 for that. On Workforce Solutions, Cameron, from time to time, Workforce Solutions has opportunities to leverage some local funds with either some federal or state dollars. And so this year we set aside $50,000 for that. Not sure that we're going to expend that. I hope that we can, but I'm putting another $75,000 in for next year, just in case, so that we have that kind of money available for workforce training. And then just recently we spent $73,000, or had committed to $73,000 for a matching grant for the auto collision program at TSCC. So I'm setting aside another $75,000 for something similar to that. And this is for high demand occupations. If again, TSCC and Workforce and the local employers have a request for specific training that can enhance the skills of the current workforce, or new people coming into the workforce, then we're setting aside some monies for that purpose. So that kind of gives us a total on that. This contract expense is just a bookkeeping thing that had to do with, I can't remember last year, so that number's a little bit off. But anyway, that's part of the expenditures that we have. And then on property taxes, these are property taxes that we pay, but are actually reimbursed to us, most of them anyway, by Bass Pro Shop, because they pay for all their property tax, city, school, and county, and all related entities. And so it's a pass-through. So that's an expense, but there's also a revenue that offsets most of that. But we have a few properties now that we didn't have before, so there's a little bit of a bump up in case we need to cover some of our properties in terms of some of those property taxes. Any questions on those? If not, and you'll get all of this later on, together with the revenue side, not just for the board, but also for city commission. And we're going to go over this at least one more time before we get to the point to where we actually approve this. But on debt services, I wanted to talk a little bit about where we're at with our debt. Last year, we paid a total of $3.2 million between principal and interest on our bonds and the Frost Bank note. This year, we're projected to be quite a bit less at 2.7, so $500,000 savings because of the refunding. So some very, very nice numbers in terms of our financing costs going down. And then for next year, we're still looking at about 2.7 in terms of our annual debt service, which is $500,000 less than it was in the past. But there's also close to $500,000 for the Frost Bank, and that'll be the last payment for the Frost Bank note. So after that, for 21-22 fiscal year, we're actually going to have an additional $500,000 in added capacity, if you will. So that's a total of about $1 million swing in the 2-year period in terms of debt. So we're doing very well in managing that debt. If you look at the payment to the refunding bond escrow and the cost of issuance, and you look at our revenue side on the same statement, those $24 million balances out the revenue side and then the cost side. So that's kind of a pass through. Basically, we refunded the bonds, and the cost of doing all of that was also absorbed into the new bonds. And then this is a 380 agreement that we have on the Bass Pro, and we're trying to stay consistent with this past year in terms of the payments to the developer for the property. Any questions on any of that? If not, then we're looking at this year, if you take the 24 out, we're still at about $7 million in expenditures, and most of that increase, if you will, above the $6 million mark was the $1 million that we set aside for the Harlingen Help Program. So we've been fairly consistent in last year's expenditures at 5.9, next year's at 6.4. More or less, again, like I said, we're going to tighten these numbers up a little bit more, but this is kind of the range that we've been, if you look at the last 3 or 4 years, that's the range that we've been kind of operating on. That's basically all I have on the presentation for the budget. Now, this gives you an opportunity, because this is not a final expenditure budget, to talk about other things that maybe you've seen that we should be looking at in terms of expenditures. I think it's a pretty aggressive and type of budget in terms of expenditures. On the revenue side, we've always been very conservative, and sometimes we don't balance our budget, but it's because sometimes we project to expend money and then we don't end up spending it, and it ends up being a balanced budget or close to it. But we don't have a requirement for a balanced budget. But if you look at our revenues and you look at our balance sheet, we're in very good shape right now, with well over $8 million in our reserve in cash.
Yeah, since it's been a few weeks since we looked at our revenue side, what's the revenue side compared to that 6.3 million expenditures?
The revenue side right now is at about $5.96 million. I need to tighten up those numbers a little bit, but there's going to be a little bit, this will be a deficit budget. And we'll go over that again next time.
Right now, that's only if you give out all the money to the Harlingen Helps, you may not use all that. So I don't think it'll be that bad. But am I the only one that saw Mike jump into the water off the bridge?
He got lost in the fog, sir.
No, I just think he just jumped off the bridge there. So just an observation.
I do have a comment. A couple of weeks ago, I had reached out to Raudel because this is a little off topic, but I was concerned about our citywide Wi-Fi with all of our students having to do our remote or virtual learning. And I didn't know if that was something we probably needed to assist with, but Raudel stated that he felt the city was working on that with HCISD. And I didn't know if that's something that somebody could talk about just a little bit and how we're doing with that, or is that something that we need to help look at?
Yeah, Dan? I know that we had worked on it. Initially, we reached out to VTX and to the school district, and the city's been working on something related to citywide Wi-Fi. But I think Dan is probably in a better position to address that. But that's certainly something that we can look at in terms of participation. If there's some funding.
I know it's just going to be so expensive, and I didn't know if it was cost prohibitive. I didn't know, but I thought, well, maybe that's something that we could look at if they need our assistance. I don't know what the status is, Dan. I'm sorry on all of that, and I haven't seen you or talked to you in a while. So I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I'd have to get an update from our IT department, see where they're at with the school. I know they've been communicating. I don't know where we're at this point, but I can get a report from them and then send it out there.
Hey, Dan, the city of, it was on the news, the city of Donna School District, I think, invested like $3.8 million. I don't know how they came up with that money or where they got the money from, but I think that was the investment. And Donna's quite a bit smaller than we are, right? So I think it'd be a little bit more expensive than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they got the funding from. I believe it's federal funds, but and that's something that our school may be working on, but I have to get a report from our IT folks.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Well done. Appreciate it, Riddell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raudel.
Item number 3 is executive session, and I have it there just in case we wanted to get into executive session and talk about the projects, but I don't think we need to do that at this time unless you all have a desire to talk about the spec building program or the Roosevelt project.
Well, the only thing I think we can't let slide is our home office stuff.
No, we're actually looking at that, and thank you for reminding us, but we're doing some visits for some of the office space that's out there right now and taking a look at either lease space or even some potential purchase options. Obviously, since we're already in August, it would be we've already talked about some of this stuff, but the best option for us is to look at something kind of a short-term window, 3 to 5 year type of deal. And that's what we're looking at right now. So we'll get back with y'all on those specifics once next week and later on this week, we look at some of those properties.
Okay. Any other business? It sounds like we're ready to adjourn.
We kept it under an hour.
Well done.
So lunch is still being delivered, right? Because my back door is open.
Be right over.
So that's it basically. Thank you all.
Thank you. Do we need a motion to
Have a good
adjourn?
day. Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Till next time, folks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.